I always have like a million passion projects going on around like chronic illness and tick-borne disease. Typically, actually, next week on Thursday is when I would throw my annual gala called the Sublime Soiree, fundraising for Global Lyme Alliance. And I'm very, very sad. Obviously, we can't have it this year, but I'm working on a couple of different ways to still raise money for them virtually. And I also actually am putting together a coffee table book called Faces of Lyme. And last year I started collecting stories and photos from those around the US living with tick-borne illness, just to kind of put a face to invisible illness. So I'm in the process of finalizing that. So that's been really cool to work on, and read everyone's stories.
Welcome back to Have a Map, where we talk all things career. Excited for today's episode, but also sad because it's the last day of our interns or our summer interns program. And they have done so much during this weird time that we're in, and actually created a bond, which I think is so beautiful and speaks to the work that the team has been doing behind the scenes. So excited about that. But let's get into things. I'm Mamadou Njai, your host of Have a Map, and my co-host today is Anna Roberts. Anna, you want to say what up? Introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. I'm a PR intern at DIM Events, and actually I'm staying on and moving to an intern manager position on Monday. So exciting transitions. Yeah, that's who I am.
Perfect. And Anna is actually one of the people who helped to create this podcast, right? So we did a bunch of test runs, and Anna was there with David, and they really worked to build this out and create this into what it is now. So
yeah, this is like my baby, so it's so exciting to see it like grow and be a part of it now again. So
introducing our guest, Alex Moresco. Allie, a lot of AKAs out there. Allie and I actually went to DePaul together, and we knew each other from there. And she let me work on her magazine, or online blog at the time, right? And I actually learned a lot about that. Didn't do the best work, and I can honestly say that. But I think, we learned a lot. And I think we built a relationship that, I reached out to her probably like a month ago to come speak to the interns, and she just, did it and came and chatted with them, and I was super thankful for that. So, Allie, say what's up, introduce yourself.
Oh my gosh. Well, number one, thank you so much for having me and letting me come back to talk to people again. God bless you. Number two, I did not let you work with me. I was lucky to have you. So turn that around. It's funny because I was just thinking about like the fashion show we used to do and the money, we used to raise for UNICEF. And I kind of had like forgotten about that. And then I found the photos on my phone. And I was like, oh my God, it feels like a lifetime ago. Like in the pandemic, I feel like it's been like 5 years since March.
Yeah, it's definitely like March 325th today. Like, we're still in March.
Christmas? I don't know. Yeah, but so thanks for having me on, you guys. Thanks for having me back. I'm so appreciative. I'm Allie Moresco, Alex Moresco, whatever you want to call me. I'm the founder of Moresco PR based here in Chicago. So I'm lucky enough to work with a handful of healthcare centered clients, and also develop and executive produce a few TV shows, which has been a lot of fun. And I do a lot of philanthropy and political advocacy around healthcare and chronic illness. So that's my story.
So did you always know that you wanted to go into communications and PR?
I don't know if you feel this way, but like in high school, PR, advertising, like marketing communications was never once like discussed. So I didn't even know about it. So I went to DePaul. I declared as an accounting major, which was the worst decision of my life because I can't do math to save my life. So I suffered through it for half of the year, I switched to econ, thought maybe it would be better, suffered through that, and it probably was even worse. And then it was my sophomore year that I declared as a communications PR ad major. Yeah, so I had no idea. I just kind of like figured it out.
Yeah, no, I went to a school that was really, really heavily science and math based. And what money didn't go to science and math all went to football. So like there was nothing left over for English or the arts. And so I kind of fell into acting because I felt like that was the only way. I knew I was like good with people. I liked watching people. I liked talking to people.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting into acting. And I guess it honestly wasn't until I graduated and I was home and I was sick and I was reading about how can I get into advocacy that I started learning about communications. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can have a career in this. Like it was so like delightful to learn. Yeah.
And it's funny because you might not think of something like acting or theater like going hand in hand with communications, but in reality, you have to be so outgoing and such a people person to go into it that you're like the perfect candidate. So
I hope so. That's what I'm trying to tell people.
True.
Yeah. Yeah.
So during that time, like after sophomore year, did you do any like internships or anything that really like helped you to see, hey, this is what it's like to be in this industry and I love it, right? I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, I was really lucky. Through my original blog, I made a lot of connections, and my freshman into sophomore year summer, I worked for Skirt PR. And it's funny because I left that internship and I just was like, PR is not for me. I don't think I can go into PR. And then I just continued to work on blogging, and I got connected with Nike when they were opening up their first brick and mortar Nike Training Club store, which was on Armitage right in Lincoln Park near DePaul University's campus. And they were trying to figure out, basically they opened up the store. It was supposed to be geared towards college students with like free workout classes and really cool apparel. And then they found that it was mostly like the Lincoln Park moms coming into the store, and it was not who they're trying to target. So I worked with them through Street Style Shy, and then I ended up joining their team to actually help open this brick and mortar concept at the time. And it was really interesting because I got to learn a lot about research. I got to help them start their first influencer seeding program in Chicago, which was really cool. I got to learn a lot about like the branding and marketing and like layouts that go into their stores and into their products and their social media and all of these like ambassador and influencer programs that they have. And I feel like what was really unique about that experience that kind of set me up to move along further in my career was I worked with a team of 7 women that relocated to Chicago from all over the country to open the store. And they genuinely wanted to see each other and the girls working for them succeed. So every like ounce of knowledge that they had, they shared it, and they shared it very genuinely, which I really credit a lot back to those women at Nike for kind of educating me on communications and PR and like digital strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like a work environment like that is just so vital to really being able to succeed in your future and like really find what you're interested in, because I think so many people will have like a bad experience in a career they like, and it ends up turning them off that career in a career they could have been very successful in. Like I mean, I have to credit UMO with this internship program. I've learned so much, and it's such an educational setting. Like I always felt able to ask just any question I had, even if it like sounded kind of stupid in my head. So I definitely, yeah, a good work environment is just vital.
Yeah. And that's why I think, you know, Mo, what you're doing is so important and so great, because a lot of the times, specifically, you know, within communications, people are very judgmental and it's very harsh and very critical, and you don't feel like you can ask those questions or learn or grow. without the fear of like somebody coming down on you. So having that very positive, nurturing like environment to succeed, I think is everything.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that, and thank you for the kind sentiments. One thing that I think is very fascinating, right, and it shows like your work ethic, right, of you didn't have the best experience, and then you went back to what you truly loved, right, and you utilized that to gain experience, right. And I was just talking to one of our interns today about that, but like, how vital do you think that is, especially today, right? A lot of these agencies and brands are looking to work with people who are on the ground floor actually getting the stuff done, right? So can you speak to that experience of making sure that you're still doing the work, even if you don't have the experience on your resume?
I think now in agencies and the larger like communications firm, PR firms, it's very difficult because they want you to have experience, right, to work there. And in reality, if you're like a freshman or sophomore, or even junior in college, you might not have the experience yet because you're still learning. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I had a lot of success with unintentionally like branding myself first and showing that I had the communication skills and the writing skills and the social media skills. And then going, you know, my first one was Skirt PR, and that it wasn't a bad experience by any means. It was just different, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then I kind of just kept pushing on and making connections and trying to find like the right fit that I loved and that resonated. So I think if you don't have experience and you're trying to get into the industry, social media is like a blessing and a curse, right? Because people can look up like anything you've ever posted in your life. But you can also use it really positively to your advantage to show what you're passionate about and show off your skills through having a blog or through having, you know, a really awesome Instagram or TikTok or like whatever it is now, you know, that they really look at closely. So, and it doesn't even have to be a large following. It just has to show, you know, that you're engaged and you understand like what's going on in the industry and trends and your aesthetic and everything like that.
Yeah, I think that's so fascinating. Like, that's something that we actually have in common, right? My first Nike gig was actually through a cooking series that I would do, and I would just post it on my Instagram. Oh. And someone from the agency saw it and reached out to me, and then we didn't get the first one, but we ended up getting the second one. And it was all from something that, you know, you just had an idea and you tried it out, right? And I think more people should actually try to do what they're interested in, right? Something that they love, even if it's not making money, right? Because I'm sure at that time you weren't really making money from it. You were just doing it from a passion standpoint. So
just because you love it and enjoy it, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I think something I've really thought about since getting sick is that so many of the things we work on, it's to be successful or for one like large end goal, like we feel like we have to accomplish something, you know, at the end of it. And in reality, you can just do things you love and be happy with that, you know, with no real end goal in mind, just doing it because you love it. It makes you smile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've definitely been reminded of that during the pandemic as well. I feel like so many people have been, there's so much on social media, you know, like Shakespeare wrote King Lear during his pandemic and like blah, blah, blah. You could be getting so much work done. It's like, we've never lived through this before. Our parents have never lived through this before. We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's really just a time I've been trying to sort of like take care of myself, really.
Yeah, it's so important. And I think a lot of those like social media posts like about Shakespeare writing whatever, like one of my least favorite ones are like the graphics where it's like, just put on some lipstick and handle it. And it's like, it's not always that easy.
It's not that easy.
You know? Like 100 people are dying all around us. People are getting so sick. We're still locked in our homes for the most part.
Yeah.
Not a normal time. I don't want to write, you know, a Shakespeare book.
Maybe sometimes all I can do is curl up and watch Jersey Shore reruns, and that should be good enough.
Yes, or Selling Sunset.
Yes.
Enough.
I know. How have you been sort of like taking care of yourself during the pandemic? Like, how are you practicing self-care right now?
It's funny, and a lot of people have echoed this, like within the chronic illness communities, that this way of life really is not that different for us.
Right.
Because we're not out and about all the time, whether because we're sick or we don't have the energy or it's flu season or like whatever it is. So like I've always worn a mask in public places.
Right.
Like that's not, different for me or culture shock for me. But I think it just is practicing like the same standard of self-care that I've learned over the years of being sick. And it's, if you're tired, if your brain's not working, like take an hour, like lay down, rest, like do something else. Don't force yourself or torture yourself, to keep going, whether you're physically or mentally fatigued. And I was actually just reading a really interesting article yesterday by a science journalist who interviewed a handful of different psychology experts, and just about like the mental health issues that are popping up around the pandemic, and having this sense of like sadness. And I guess it's actually called ambiguous loss. And it's when you feel like you're suffering a loss with no end, like no solution. And up until I read that article, I couldn't put a name to like the sadness that I've been feeling. And we have this ambiguous loss, around our way of life. And we have to take the time to process that and like let ourselves grieve that. And if you just keep like trudging forward as if like nothing's wrong, I just think it's unhealthy, and we've got to like give ourselves some grace and cut ourselves some slack and do what we need to do.
That is what my bracelets say. I have bracelets that say grace on my wrist always.
Mine don't say that, but I have little ones that I made too.
I think it's so important to give yourself grace always. That's one thing I've been trying to remind myself. I really think the best self-care can be just listening to your body. So if you're feeling something, feel it. If you're feeling tired, let yourself take a nap. Like there's no reason to force yourself to do something if your body is telling you it's tired. If you're hungry, eat a snack. Like that is something I'm so passionate about, is really making sure that like, I see this rhetoric going around talking about the quarantine 20. And I'm like, if the worst thing that happens in this quarantine is that you gain 20 pounds, you came out of it pretty lucky. Like,
Great.
Yeah, exactly. You did well.
You had food on your table, you're fine.
Yeah, eat something. Eat a slice of cake. Like 100%, it's normal.
Yeah.
So definitely, yeah, I agree with you.
I'm so happy you feel that way too.
Let's talk a little bit about what are maybe some projects that you're working on right now that you can, chat a little bit about, right? Some stuff that's been inspiring you and keeping you kind of, moving along during the pandemic as much as you can.
Yeah. So I've been really lucky to have a lot going on during the pandemic to keep myself distracted, that I'm genuinely very passionate about. So from a work standpoint, I work with a couple of different clients. I work with a health practice that is based in Westtown Case Integrative Health that I absolutely adore. It's a female-founded practice, female-founded and owned. And the Dr. Casey Kelly treats complex chronic illness, and she actually treats a lot of tick-borne illness and a lot of Lyme disease. And literally the week that Chicago went into lockdown, I reached out to a contact at a Chicago outlet, and we ended up having Dr. Kelly literally on Fox on Good Day Chicago every single day as their COVID expert. So that was really interesting to work on and kind of see like behind the scenes what was going on, and to be able to help like report on that and communicate that messaging around the pandemic when it was so needed, was really awesome and felt very rewarding. And then I also am working with a large adaptive apparel brand called Mighty Well that was founded by quote unquote a professional patient, Emily Levy, when she was in college, and it's turned into this massive adaptive apparel brand. But I am in the process of helping them launch their Mighty Well mask, which is an FDA approved antimicrobial face mask. and it's an awesome product. It feels really good to be able to work on a product that like I truly believe in and wear every day and think, you know, that everyone needs, but more importantly, like the immunocompromised, the chronically ill. So I'm having a little bit of a flashback because I'm actually, my first project with them is creating an influencer program like I did for Nike. So that's been really neat. And then I am also working on a couple of TV shows, which is like my true passion with work. I helped create and sell a show called Double Take for Facebook Watch a little over a year ago with John Cena. And that was a phenomenal process, an amazing experience. And I hope, you know, I get to work on something like that again. Yeah, and then I always have like a million passion projects going on around like chronic illness and tick-borne disease. Typically, actually, next week on Thursday is when I would throw my annual gala called the Sublime Soiree, fundraising for Global Lyme Alliance. And I'm very, very sad, obviously, we can't have it this year, but I'm working on a couple of different ways to still raise money for them virtually. And I also actually am putting together a coffee table book called Faces of Lyme. And last year I started collecting stories and photos from those around the US living with tick-borne illness, just to kind of put a face to invisible illness. So I'm in the process of finalizing that. So that's been really cool to work on, you know, and read everyone's stories.
Wow. So you've got a little bit going. Just like a little bit.
You know, it sounds like a lot, but like day to day, I work on like one thing at a time, you know, so it's not that bad. And then when I'm tired and my brain shuts down, like that's it, you know, okay, we're done for today.
So then what does kind of like a day-to-day look? I'm sure every day looks different, but what does it kind of involve?
Yeah, like you said, like no 2 days are the same.
Right.
And so typically I get up and I use something called the Franklin Planner. And it's actually, it sounds funny, but it's a planner made for people with anxiety. So yeah, I'll send you the link.
Yeah, please.
It's called the Franklin Planner. And it's broken down into these different subsets of like, what's critical that I have to get done today? What should I probably get done today? And like, what should I get done this week? But it's not like important. And it just kind of helps you to break everything down into categories so you don't feel overwhelmed. Because if you're somebody like me and you write everything down, I place as much importance on like my largest task as I do on my smallest.
Yeah, I'm exactly.
I get upset when I don't get it done and it's just not realistic. So I create my Franklin Planner, and then I typically have a call with my PR assistant, Emily, that works for me, who I adore, and we go through our day and what needs to get done. And then I typically will take calls from like 11:30 to like 2:30. And then I finish up the rest of my work typically while doing like an IV or infusing some kind of medication, because that's just life, you know, got to do it right now. And then between like 4 and 5, I'm done with my day because my brain is just shut off. Yeah. And then I wind down, I'll take my dog for a walk, I'll watch TV, you know, whatever it is. So yeah. My day.
I think that's great. I think it's so important to speak about, you don't need to be grinding 24/7 to have a fulfilling and productive work life. I think that's like a fallacy that American and probably just like Western work culture has like really tried to teach people. And I think it is really detrimental for a lot of people's mental health. So
absolutely.
I think, yeah, important to speak about it.
Yeah, I think we have this culture of, if you're not telling everyone how exhausted you are and how little sleep you got, you're not working hard enough. And in reality, it is detrimental, you know, and it makes us unhealthy and it makes us get sick. And, you know, fall into depression and things like that. And I really hope that one of hopefully many positive changes that comes out of the COVID pandemic is a shift from that and prioritizing health and wellness and having a balanced life and lifestyle as we should.
I agree. I was reading a study that they'd done in the Netherlands, I think, or I'm not sure where it was, somewhere in Europe, about a 4-day work week. And the workers ended up being just as productive in those 4 days as they were in 5 days. People it's important, and they were happier, and I think ended up being sort of more productive, because when people are happy and healthy in their private lives, they do better work.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with you.
Yeah. We'll see. I'm hoping to see some positive changes.
No,
Yeah.
I feel.
I hope we can see a lot more changes, because I think a lot of people are seeing that, one, you don't necessarily need an office space. People can work from home a little bit more. You can give them a little more space to enjoy time with their families. And it's a really good time for people to self-reflect, right? Really spend time with yourself, because I think, we get so busy with, especially in Chicago, right? You get busy, especially in the summer. There's this going on, there's that going on. I got to show my face here. I have to show my face here. And there's none of that right now, right? It might be a Zoom call. You see a lot of people like checking in on old friends and really establishing connections, and then doing more stuff with your family. So
yeah,
I think it's just a fascinating time.
Yeah, I agree.
Very important. It's been really interesting for me because my husband and I have been together. September will be 7 years, and he's in business, and our whole relationship since we met, he has traveled 5 days a week. Wow. And it's been so funny, like having him home and like spending time with him, and I love it, but it's very, very different. And it's funny because for the first time he's like, I didn't know it was this great to be home and like eat dinner at home and like, not work until midnight, in an office and all these things. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to the club,
Awesome.
Yeah.
For people who are, interested in, going into the TV route or learning a little bit of stuff like that, what advice would you give them, right? Because I know a lot of people see these things on TV, see these interviews, and a lot of people can kind of just brush over how they directly got into some of those places. So what advice would you give to those people who are interested in it but have no clue on where to start and where to go in that direction?
Yeah, I would say so. For me, it happened accidentally. My first TV project was with a comedian and a hypnotist named Chris Jones, who's actually one of my best friends. He lives in Chicago, and he was on the most watched episode of America's Got Talent ever, still to this day. And I was doing his PR, and he got approached by a production company to film a pilot, and he was like, I'm only doing this if you do it with me. And I was like, okay. So I had no idea what I was doing. I'll be 100% honest. And I kind of just jumped in head first because I love him and adore him and always want him to succeed. And I kind of got accidentally taken through the process of how you actually develop and create and sell a TV show. So we sold one that never ended up getting made past the pilot because the network completely shifted their purpose. And then we sold Double Take, which was where I really got taken through the full process of creating it, working with the production company, working, with the teams mostly based in New York, working with legal to negotiate his contracts, and then actually filming it and writing the scripts and producing it. And I ended up actually becoming a producer on the show, which was really awesome. And I got a lot of experience with that. But I would say from what I've seen in the industry, and I hate to say this, a lot of it is who you know. And I don't even think you need to have like a direct connection to somebody, but I think people in the industry are very willing, if you send them a message or an email or an Instagram DM, to connect because they love the industry, and people in the industry are so passionate about the industry. And there's always like an intern role or a PA role or something available because these TV shows and sets or movies have so many people that they need to employ. That might be your best way to get your foot in. But like, I know personally, like if somebody were to reach out to me and say, can you talk to me about the industry or about your experience? I'd be more than happy. And then from there, like, I'd be happy to connect people, you know, if I feel like it's a good fit. So I think it's just putting yourself out there and being like a hard worker and being willing to start from the bottom and like really learn every aspect of a trade within TV, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hear you say, like, I kind of dove in, not really knowing what to do. And I mean, I totally, we were talking about this today at my performance review. Like, when I started this internship, I was pretty upfront. Like, I really didn't have any experience, any classes or formal training in PR. And I just kind of tried to throw myself into it and ask as many questions as I could. And I think if you work hard and are dedicated and you're not afraid to look a little silly sometimes, it can like really take you much farther than you think it can.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And I think this applies to any industry.
Yeah.
But people look for work ethic,
Mm-hmm.
like, and they can teach you a skill, but they can't teach you work ethic. So if, you know, if you're like you or me or Mo and you demonstrate that you have drive, somebody's going to be willing to take you on and kind of teach you from the ground up. And I think that's a really awesome thing. I will warn anyone though that's interested in going into the TV industry right now that there's a lot of halts going on. So like, don't be discouraged, but there's been like massive layoffs, you know, at a lot of like the major agencies like CAA, UTA. Productions are backed up because like filming is halted everywhere. So don't get discouraged. Just pick it up another time when we're in a post, hopefully, I hope.
Yeah.
COVID world.
Right.
We'll get there eventually.
I hope so.
For us, we like to just go deep into it. And I always like to know, what do you feel like your impact on the world is?
So I love this question, and I feel like it's something we don't get to talk about enough. And I don't know if it's because I don't want to say that most people don't go this deep or get this involved, but what I've noticed from like my healthcare work since getting sick is that people only really get involved when either they themselves are impacted or they have like a loved one or a close friend be impacted by something. So I would like to think that I have the right values and the right goals, and I'm really aligned with like my purpose and what I love and what I'm meant to be doing. And I know you two already know this, but I'll reiterate for whoever's listening. I started my PR firm my senior year of college, very, very young. And I loved it. But then I got very, very sick within a year. So I started losing my memory. I was in very severe, you know, pain all the time. And eventually it got to the point where I was bedridden. And it took 2 years to finally figure out what was wrong with me. So I was finally diagnosed with multiple tick-borne illnesses. And then I came to find out that, you know, Lyme disease, tick-borne illness is like wildly misunderstood in the medical community. Testing is only 55% accurate, which is crazy. And insurance past 30 days does not have to cover treatment. So there's hundreds of thousands of people, you know, in the US, but also all over the world, you know, where basically if you just can't afford treatment, you're left to wither away. And there's a misconception, you know, that people don't die from tick-borne disease, but, you know, it does happen. Like Senator Kay Hagan, who sadly passed away, I think it was in December, from Powassan virus. So I really pivoted my full focus to advocacy for others, especially around tick-borne illness. And even furthermore, now that I've become more educated on the issues and on the politics and legislation, even more so just into the general healthcare and chronic illness spectrum. So I would like to think that my impact on the world, my true purpose and true impact, like outside of work, is my advocacy efforts and my philanthropy efforts, and just truly trying to make the world a better place for future generations so that when it comes to illness and chronic illness and tick-borne disease, they don't have to suffer, you know, the way that I have and the way now, you know, many friends and thousands of people, you know, that I've had the chance to meet through the years through fundraising, you know, and hearing their story. I don't want others to have to suffer that way. So
That's really inspiring for me to hear. I can completely relate. I was living in New York until last year, and then I ended up getting really sick in January, and then by June I had to come home, and it felt like just a complete 180 from like living by myself as an actress in New York to basically having to rely on my mom to take care of me like I was like 8 again. And I don't think people understand what it's like dealing with health insurance until you really have to deal with something like that. Because most of the time, for minor things, like at least I'd never run into insurance saying, no, we're not going to cover that before. I've never dealt with having to get on the phone and be like, I need this. And people don't understand like how many people in the US especially are really, really fighting with their insurance companies to get the treatment they need every single day. And it sometimes feels like they almost say like, you're not sick enough. And it feels like you need to get sicker to get treatment.
Yeah. And sadly, well, first of all, I'm so sorry that you also had to go through that. I know it's a very tough road to go down, and there isn't a choice. But second of all, that is exactly the problem, right? Is number one, there's some people just have no access to health insurance because it's so expensive, which is a massive problem in itself. And number two, that's, you're exactly right. And you say they just want you to get sicker. You're never quite sick enough. And that's what's really sad about it, right? Is these companies are supposed to be here to help you, in your time of need. And in reality, all they do is deny.
Yeah. And end up making you sicker. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very disappointing and it's very sad once you really see what's going on.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I know for me, I before I actually was doing events full time, I worked in as an insurance brokerage firm, and I saw the side of insurance that was not like it wasn't what I thought it was, right? I think, a lot of insurance companies and the majority of them just focus as a company that's trying to profit, right? And that is the sad part about our healthcare system and like the advocacy work and the awareness of it, right? Like that is where a lot of people can help, right? And like sharing the awareness and then also passing legislation to help that move forward as well. And I think, definitely there's a lot of stuff in the world that we need to work on and fix. But a lot of this stuff is things that people need to be aware of, and then they can get behind it and we can push and create movement. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will say, like, personally, just from your Instagram, I've found like a lot of awareness about tick-borne illnesses, which I just really wasn't educated about previously. So I think it's doing really important work just talking about it.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that you feel like you've learned something, because that's always my goal. It's just to prevent people from ending up like me. And it's interesting, Mo, that, you made that point about creating the awareness so we can fight for this change, because I had the privilege of going to DC in February, like right before everything got shut down. And I got the chance to sit down with a lot of our senators and congressmen for different states in the Midwest. And the one sentiment that really stuck with me was there has to be pressure from the outside or nothing changes. They don't actively look at these issues unless, their constituents are demanding the change. So that's why it's so important, not just around healthcare, but around every advocacy effort going on, that like people write the letters and send the emails and pick up the phone and protest and make their voices heard, or nothing will change, it has to at some point.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So did you find sort of like a lot of strength in like turning your PR to advocacy? Was that sort of like during your sickness, you were like working on that, or sort of after? Like what was kind of the timeline there, if you don't mind? Yeah.
So I had to stop working because I was too sick, really to do anything, to even get out of bed. So I started, once I finally had my diagnosis, I started researching, how can I help? And I found out about Global Lyme Alliance, which is a 501c3 based out of the East Coast. And I reached out to them and I said, I have PR skills, I have event skills, like, let me help you, let me do something for you. And it took a couple of months, but I finally heard back from them and connected. And that's how I started my advocacy work and my fundraising work through them, which is originally it was just raising money, for research and patient advocacy efforts.
Right. That's amazing.
You do so much, and during that time, what type of music do you listen to get you into the right mood or the right headspace?
Oh my God. So number one, this is incredibly embarrassing, but I'm going to admit this to you. Lately, I've been listening a lot to the TikTok playlist on Spotify.
I love the TikTok playlist on Spotify.
Don't judge me. But my go-to typically is an artist named Borne. I actually worked with him. I used to handle PR and celebrity talent for an online publication called A Drink With. And we interviewed him at a venue in Chicago before he really blew up. So I started researching him and listening to him in preparation for this big interview for the talent. And then I just totally fell in love with his music. And he was just an incredible person. So yeah, those are my two go-tos right now. One embarrassing, one not so embarrassing.
I don't think TikTok is that embarrassing.
Not embarrassing.
I go on TikTok and I really try to stay off there because you get stuff on there for so long, but so much music on there is inspirational. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never heard this song before. Or I like this song because I remember the dance.
Yeah.
I'm
well, what's crazy too is people are just blowing up from TikTok.
Right.
D'Amelio, huge celebrities now. It's such a huge platform.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and I'm sure you find it interesting too, Anna, from a PR communication standpoint. To see now that TikTok is what's driving the top 20, right, on the streaming platforms, and all of these stars now are landing some of the largest sponsorship deals, that we've ever seen, and they're signing with CAA and UTA and
massive,
unheard of things for social media networks. So I just find it fascinating and
it's so interesting.
It's crazy.
I mean, I don't even think we've seen such I don't even think I saw such a massive rise, and it's quick too is the thing. Charli D'Amelio, she gained so many followers in a matter of months. I saw recently she's up to almost 80 million subscribers. I don't know if there are people I'm sure there are people on Instagram with the same impact, but it's a different kind of medium.
Yeah, I think the most followed influencer is, and I'm probably not going to say her name right, it's Italian, but Chiara Ferragni, and I think she's in the 20s, 20 millions.
Really?
So then to see Charli, who has 80 million on TikTok and then an additional 25 on Instagram, you're this, it's just crazy.
And she's 16. I
know. Can you imagine being 16 and having 100 million collective followers?
Oh, no. And I'm glad I didn't at 16. I was a crazy 16-year-old.
So Anna, let's talk a little bit about what do you listen to? Or what have you been listening to recently?
Okay, so honestly, recently I've been feeling kind of nostalgic lately and really kind of missing my parents. And I was thinking about my dad every Sunday used to cook this magnificent feast, so much food, lots of dessert, appetizers, and he would listen to music all day while he was cooking. And I would always be in the kitchen with him and dancing. And it was always folk music. So I've been listening to Nancy Griffith, some Guster. This was all the music I grew up with listening to my dad. So
very cool.
Yeah.
When we always come on here, I would say we need to make a playlist because all the music that we listen, all the music that people mention on here, I am not aware of it sometimes. I stay in a bubble with my music, so it's not the best. But
yeah, Nancy Griffith, beautiful, beautiful voice. Highly recommend. And she's not too country. She's a perfect folksy. She's good.
Allie, I want to thank you so much for jumping on here and having a great conversation. If people are interested in, reaching out to you and kind of picking your brain, what or where can they reach out to you, and what's the best means to do so?
So I would say I love Instagram. Send me a message at Alexandra Moresco, and my email is also linked in my Instagram, info@amorescopr.com. So send me an email, send me an Instagram message. I'm always happy to connect. And yeah, just let me know, what you're looking for, what you're learning to learn about. And I'm happy, to chat or whatever people want.
It's been really such a pleasure talking to you. I have a lot of respect for you finding this motivation in your struggle to advocate for other people. It's really what I'm looking to do as well. So I think it's very inspiring.
It sounds like you're doing it. So you got to give yourself more credit.
Thank you.
And at the end of this, we always like to give a round of applause and thank you so much for what you've done and just coming in here and speaking and sharing a lot of insight, because, this will definitely help and bless someone moving forward into their career, their life, whatever it may be. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. I hope so. And I can't wait to listen to the rest of the season. So thanks for all that you guys do on behalf of others. And thanks for letting me talk about my journey. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Of course. And thank you for all our listeners listening there, whether this is your morning routine, afternoon, or your evening way of getting some work done. And we are out.